breathing on purpose, which is a term that I learned from Audrey Kindred, who does the Sunday school at the New York Society. From there, we'll explore the difference between a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. We'll have an embodiment practice. We'll reflect on what an abundance mindset can bring to the ethical culture movement, and we'll end with some ideas to practice. Does that sound fair and reasonable? Thumbs up. Got some thumbs up. All right. Well, here we go. So Rumi was a 13th century Sufi poet, scholar, and philosopher, and a lot of admiration for his creations. And I'm sharing a poem today titled "The Worm's Waking." This is how a human being can change. There's a worm, addicted to eating grape leaves. Suddenly she wakes up. Call it grace, whatever. Something wakes her up, and she's no longer a worm. She's the entire vineyard, and the orchard too, the fruit, the trunks, a growing wisdom and joy that doesn't need to devour. So that's Rumi. Let that settle in, and we'll return to that later. So now we're going to do some breathing on purpose to get into our bodies, link up our bodies, our minds, and our spirits as we're together. So if you would like to turn your camera off during this, I understand that. If you're comfortable, you can also leave it on. I suggest you bring one hand to your abdomen. You may also want to bring one hand to your heart. Do whatever is comfortable for you. So breathing on purpose can reduce cortisol levels. We can give some love to our parasympathetic nervous system, which I think everybody needs right now. So we're just going to begin by inhaling as deeply as is comfortable for you. And then notice the top of your inhale before you begin exhaling, and then exhale as fully as you can. And do your best to make your inhale and your exhale of equal length. Don't force anything. Make sure it's comfortable for your body, but try. So let's take 3 breaths. I'm going to do them at my pace, and then we'll come back. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully that felt good. So I'll begin with some definitions so that you know what I mean when I'm talking about scarcity and abundance. So a scarcity mindset is the persistent assumption that there is not enough for the present moment or for the future. A scarcity mindset is motivated by fear. It leads to anxiety, competition, mistrust, hoarding. Although scarcity can be real, the mindset is rooted in an ethic of individualism, and it has its origins in capitalism. An abundance mindset, on the other hand, is rooted in the assumption that there are sufficient resources, material as well as intangible, to meet our needs. It's motivated by optimism and connection, and it's grounded in an ethic of communalism. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. So now we're going to do an embodiment practice. And I received this embodiment practice while taking a White Awake course. And if you haven't heard of White Awake, I commend them to you. They do some wonderful work. And the teacher who offered this was Katrina Messenger. She is a self-identified radical feminist activist and community leader of African, Cherokee, and Celtic descent. So we're doing an ancestral recovery meditation. And what we're going to do is we're going to place ourselves into the experience of 3 generations of our elders. And I want to make sure that you feel flexible with who comes to mind. If the elder that comes to your mind is a biological elder from previous generations, wonderful. If you are adopted and you want to choose your adopted family, or you want to go with your biological family, be open to that. I also want to offer the opportunity to open yourself up to receiving wisdom from an elder of place. I don't know who among you are living in a place where your family has been for generations, or maybe your family has moved around, but maybe open yourself up to receiving the wisdom of the elders who have been there before you. So just be flexible. So again, if you feel comfortable turning your video off or leaving it on, I'll leave that to you. I'm going to return to our intentional breathing. And now I invite you to bring to mind a family elder from the preceding generation. Maybe your mother, father, adopted, biological, or chosen family. See what comes to you. Visualize yourself stepping back into this individual's experience. And we're going to reflect on 3 questions. The first question, what were this individual's challenges? What were this individual's joys? What resources for resilience did they pass on? Now, when you're ready, we'll take another generational step back. So bring to mind an ancestor from 2 generations before you. Again, be flexible with who comes to mind. Don't worry about following a single lineage. Let whoever comes to you come to you. And we'll reflect on the same 3 questions. What were this individual's challenges? What were this individual's joys? What resources for resilience did they pass on? Now, one last generational step back. Bring to mind an ancestor from 3 generations before you. What were this individual's challenges? What were this individual's joys? What resources for resilience did they pass on? Now, I welcome you back to our circle in the present day. Now, since I have the little yellow line that goes around my box, I get to tell you about my experience of this the first time I did it. And the first time I tried this, I was not able to get farther back beyond my grandmother. I didn't know enough about my family history. So I did some research, called my mom, and I found out that my great-great-grandmother's name was also Sarah. When Sarah was widowed, her husband's will was ignored, and she lost everything. Sarah and one of her daughters moved in with her sister. Her other daughter, Nellie, at approximately age 9, was sent to a children's home. And over the years, Nellie was indentured out and then returned to the home several times, sometimes for a couple years before she was returned. I can only speculate what that was like. I have an easier time imagining what Nellie's challenges were than her joys. Eventually, though, Nellie left the home. She got married, and she gave birth to my grandmother, Frida. And when I think back over the lives of these women, it can be very easy for me to think about the major disasters that they experienced. War, pandemic flu, economic collapse. Yet also, I really love imagining my grandmother, Frida, as a baby. I imagine Nellie holding her and my grandmother reaching up and grabbing her nose and pulling on her earrings and just what it's like to have a baby around, right? So this exercise for me helps me understand on a cognitive level why I was raised with a scarcity mindset. My ancestors faced scarcity. But if I apply the abundance mindset lens, I can also see this as an intergenerational journey towards healing. I was bequeathed not only the fear of scarcity, but also resilience. Recipes designed for lean times, like my mom's pie dough, and the bonds of family during difficult times. So what do I think this means for ethical culture? I'm going to introduce a quote from Adrienne Maree Brown, who is a queer Black activist, author of Emergent Strategy and Pleasure Activism. I've taken so much wisdom from her. So if you have the opportunity to encounter her, I highly recommend it. So Adrienne Maree Brown has written, "At this point, we have all the information we need to create change. It's a matter of longing, having the will to imagine and implement something else. We are living in the ancestral imagination of others with their longing for safety and abundance." End quote. It's important to acknowledge, of course, that the imagination of many before us left out a lot of people. So the question for us is, how does our scarcity mindset show up in our ethical culture communities? Do we perhaps feel the need to assert our definition of ethical culture? Whose ideas and perspectives are we maybe not making room for? Felix Adler, our beloved founder, had a concept called the ethical manifold, which wasn't extremely popular in his time. People thought it was a little kooky. But what he said was, in virtue of the reality-producing functions of my own mind, I create the ethical manifold. So what Adler was saying is, we can see ourselves as sacred. Ergo, we recognize others as also sacred. And we feel connected by this shared experience. If we extend this to our ideas of ethical culture, ethical humanism, if that resonates with you, and if we're practicing an abundance mindset, we become capable of holding a diversity of conceptualizations of our community. I myself, with reflection, can trace the development of my conceptualization of ethical humanism, and that enables me to appreciate the unique process that others have had in the development of their philosophy of life. When we gather together as a community capable of celebrating strengths in each other, maintaining the humility to accept there may be many ways to be ethical culture, we turn our focus to our relationships, to honoring the sacred in one another. From there, mutual appreciation supports curiosity and experimentation. And to return to Adrienne Maree Brown again, such curiosity and experimentation, rather than narrowing into one perfect path forward, creates for us an abundance of futures, of ways to manage resources and to be brilliant together. So some opportunities for practice. Returning to our worm. What changed for Rumi's worm? Nothing, actually, other than how she perceived her experience, realizing that she was already whole and that there was no meaningful difference between her and the universe. She did not need to consume or control. She could be and embrace she could embrace her own uniqueness and be satisfied with her place in the collective. With this mindset, we can trade fear for curiosity. We can trade the competition to be right for mutual support, even when our perspectives don't align. And we can trade attachment to measurable outcomes for the relationship building through the process of our ethical living. Making a transition to the abundance mindset requires us first to admit to ourselves that we, individuals living in this moment, need healing. We must also believe that we deserve and desire healing. Having satisfied those questions, we then begin a process that involves checking in on our emotional reactions. And each time we fall into a familiar response of fear, of competition, of judgment, we constantly begin again. Begin again. Renewal every day of our congregational life. This is the mindset upon which a radically different, radically just, radically beautiful future rests. And that is my offering, and I welcome your feedback. Thank you.
Sarah, I have some feedback for you. That was lots of good things to think about, and it made me think about what's going on right now with reopening schools in our area. And because they open pretty early here in August, and usually in early August. I know locally our school district's already delayed the opening. Well, Missouri instituted a new law this year that we can't open as early because they wanted to stay open longer for tourism dollars. That was pre-COVID. but that folds right into this, that so many people are willing to sacrifice the lives of children so that the parents can go back to work. And it's just, I don't know what the solution is, because we're a capitalist society, and it's so horrifying to me that in so many areas where we just want more. We're never satisfied with what we have. And even if it means plowing over the lives of senior citizens or children or anyone in between, that's okay with a lot of people. And it's just, I find it utterly horrifying. So thank you for your good perspective.
I thought about my mother and my grandmother and great-grandmother living through the Depression and World War II, especially World War II, where everyone came together in a way that we can't seem to do during this crisis. Well, where did we go wrong that then we were all in it together and now we're not? Because they got a lot of their resilience and their joy from going through that and going through it together with family and friends and community. Where did that go? If we still had that mindset, we'd be in a lot different place.
I think it's important not to look through that lens, that historical lens, as if it was monolithic. I think that, the stories that are told about this in, 75, 80 years will look a lot different than what we're experiencing now. I think you need to be careful not to glorify something, I don't know that, that was so unified. I think clearly what's happening right now, and what just the title of this talk, that abundance mindset is utterly lacking, I mean, and is evidenced by what's happening, like with the goofy toilet paper thing that happened, that had no basis in any kind of reality. And, the kind of that hoard mentality, I don't know. I think this is really, really smart to reflect on this personally, like where I'm feeling, I mean, I don't particularly feel hard done by this. I mean, we're fine. But watching for those markers, watching it for that in my kids, and, watching for that in my coworkers.
May I speak?
Yes.
Yeah. I was really glad to see this topic because several years ago I read a book. It was called Free, the Future of a Radical Price. And the person was talking about it in modern times. We're moving from an economy of scarcity to an economy of, I don't remember the term he used, but basically an economy of availability. And it helped me to change my mindset. He was more speaking about information. If you think about information, we're in a glut of information currently, and we will be for the rest of the time we're alive. But it goes to everything: food, transportation, all the things that we need for subsistence. Although I think people are hoarding shelter right now. They're using shelter as profit. And I have a moral problem with that, but that's my personal thing. And anyway, media, entertainment, everything was so hard to come by before. And if you can change your mindset, it really helps you to let go of trying to acquire these things, to use your resources to try to acquire information, to try to acquire entertainment, to try to acquire stores of food or entertainment, because it's so easy to get currently, and you can devote your energy and your mental energy towards more productive ventures. So I really appreciate what you're saying, Sarah.
I like that phrase. I like the phrase how it accurately describes, hoarding shelter for profit. Living in New York City, where there are lots of empty apartments and a homelessness crisis living side by side. Yeah.
Right. I remember now. It's economy of abundance was the term. And this morning on my walk, I walked by somebody in my neighbor, close by is flipping a house, and that's what I get to, people who are taking a basic human need and making that more, adding value to it and making it less acquirable for people of less means.
Yeah.
Other comments?
I like that exercise at the beginning. I actually knew one great grandma a little bit because I was the oldest of her great grandchildren. She was a lot younger than the man she married, and my family but I didn't have I didn't have in-depth conversations with her because I was a kid. But my family has talked about how she was only 40 something when she lost her husband, my great grandpa. He was in his 50s, which really affected my father. He was close to them, and he was very upset when he was still, a kid when he died, my great grandpa. And, the family has told me she never remarried. She went to work to go cook at a boys' dorm or a frat house or something. I'm not exactly sure, but she just did what had to be done and never remarried and lived into her mid 80s, in which for that generation, for a woman is pretty interesting. And that's on my dad's side of the family. And then on my mom's side, my grandma outlived 2 husbands. One was an emotionally abusive alcoholic, but she still found so much joy in music and traveling and going to church. And she would do adult education classes in the evenings and lived to be over 100. And it's just really interesting to think about how strong women have been, even when they're not supposed to, have as many job options or even like Sarah's ancestor didn't get to keep her property when she was widowed. I've often thought about how women had to keep finding a way and sometimes could succeed in spite of society.
Yeah, my great grandma was widowed in her 30s with 5 kids and went to work in a shoe factory and took in some laundry, and her kids were out there working from pretty much the time they could walk just to get food in their mouths. But they managed.
Concerned about this winter, and if things take off with this virus and it gets a lot worse and there's more unemployment and the schools have to be shut down again, and how are we as a society going to help each other get through it? I've been thinking about that a lot, and I'm really concerned because I don't know.
Yeah, we're in a moment of opportunity because it's such a crisis moment. We have the potential to see the crumbling of a system that has been more than 400 years in the making, because the pathological individualism and the hyper-capitalism that we see now has been a process since the process of enclosure in Europe, right? So are we at a point where we cannot go any farther with this, in which case it's not going to be the people who have profited off of the system that help us transition away from it. It's going to have to be us. And how will we be there for one another to build something new and beautiful and mutually beneficial?
You used the term enclosure. What did you mean by that?
The enclosure period was the intentional process, which was violent and highly disruptive, of moving from communal organization of land ownership to ownership by the lords. It was the process of accumulating land for exploitation of the land for profit that accrued to the owners of the capital of land, which was not how it was before. Before, it was communally owned, everyone benefited, everyone worked, each according to their need, each according to their capacity, right? And so the process of enclosure, the eradication of the commons in Europe, was the beginning of imperialism, right? Because if you locate it, my understanding, my historical knowledge of it is how it began in England, but it happened throughout Europe, right? So the process of enclosure begins and then expands, and that is the process that begins the imperialism that extended to the British Isles and then outward throughout Africa, throughout the rest of the world. It's also there are many people. Resma Menachem, who I can type into the chat in a minute, is just one of the individuals who have identified this process of enclosure as the origin of the white-on-white violence that generated the original trauma, which has been, in Resma Menachem's term, blown through people of color throughout the world since then. So the trauma of chattel slavery, we can trace that trauma back to the trauma of enclosure.
Thank you.
I'll type Resma Menachem in.
I think I have kind of a real problem with the pandemic of people not believing science and then people putting economics above everything else. Like Yvonne was saying, and it really seems like a scarcity mindset that people have trouble really saying where we can have partially open economy and have everybody be safe and masks, scientifically demonstrated tactics. And I think the leadership out here, being this county, being county executive, just one.
Can you move a little closer to your microphone?
Yeah, I'm having trouble too.
Oh, sorry. So is that much better now?
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks.
Yes, I was just saying, scarcity from people, for whatever reason, not trusting in science, like it somehow is demeaning to them or to their religious beliefs. The resistance to masks is appalling to me, and then also, like Jill said, putting economics above everything else. When there's a win-win solution, having a partial reopening using masks and other defensive measures, and it definitely makes me depressed sometimes.
Yeah, there's some irony that had we cracked down a little longer, a little harder, a little earlier, we'd be over it a hell of a lot earlier. The economy, the health of individuals, the country, and everything else. And because we were worried about that, we're dragging it out.
I want to believe there'll be our culture will get better in the end from the lessons that are learned by all the mistakes that are happening now, but not super optimistic. I don't know what to expect. Just like Sarah says, we need different leadership to carry us forward.
It seems like so often what the issues that we talk about with this group always comes back to vote. We have to vote. We have to change our leadership at the top, and everywhere. It's just, I don't know, horrifying when you hear that there are scams coming out of this pandemic, and it's just, I don't know how we changed people's morals. I don't know.
Connor's ready to vote.
No, he says no.
No, he's not.
He doesn't want to break the law.
Vote early, vote often, right?
Well, the other day I was explaining to him about the person in the White House, and he said, "Can we shoot him?" And I said, "No, no, 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 no. We don't shoot anybody. We vote." He said, "I'll vote. I'll vote. I'm almost 6."
Oh, I think if we put the kids in charge, we'd probably have a much more reasonable situation.
Right.
Mike, you brought up the doubt that is pervasive in science right now, and I have, as an anti-capitalist, self-identified anti-capitalist, I've been reading The Economist magazine for about 15 years. It probably contributed to it, but for a few years they've been following the failures in the scientific community, particularly related to research and the replicability of scientific research. And they've traced it back really to the economics of it, the money of it. How do you survive as a scientific research, as a scientist in our culture? And it does not lend itself to quality research. And I think that is an important part of it. It's certainly not the only part. I think that the systematic gutting of public education is part of it.
Well, I was in that. I was I have a PhD in biophysics, and I was in the academic sector for a number of years. It was a constant struggle to publish or perish and get funding, so much integrity or doing what's best research.
You know what adds to this is our delusion that we're so good at it. We have this, just due to, that people watching TV shows that, push out this information that we are superhuman in the scientific realm. And many people live under this delusion. And it's a shame because it leads to this, it leads to people not doing something as basic as wearing a mask, because what do they know? It's crazy.
The administration, the current administration has convinced people, and Fox is right there with them. Rush Limbaugh, I sound like a broken record. Convincing people you really can't trust academics. People with degrees, look out for them. They're shady. And, it goes on and on, where like, well, who can you trust? Well, anybody that's, agreeing with us is fine, on a regular basis. And it's been eroded by the Republican Party for quite a while.
Okay, I'm going to say something not popular, but I don't think the Democratic Party is the answer altogether either. I think that they're better, but I think what's wrong is that our whole basic system that we're going to have, even if like Biden gets in, things will be better. I do believe that. But I think our whole basic capitalist system that we have, if there's a really bad pandemic that happens, I'm really afraid. I don't think that our system is going to lend itself to what we need to do in order to survive. And I have a lot of concerns about that. I have a lot of concerns about, the opening up if we only wear masks and open up the economy. And I don't know. I'm just not on board with the Democrats are going to fix it all. I'm just not.
Well, neither am I, but they should chip away a little bit at the, for instance, bank regulation and things like that have just, unfettered capitalism does not work. And it puts the rich in power, and rich can buy the votes and can buy politicians. So that whole system, I agree, is jacked up. But Democrats should get us, move that needle a little bit in the correct direction, even if it's Sleepy Joe.
A little bit in the direction of humanity.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to look at how different countries have responded to the pandemic, right? You could argue that many, many more countries than the United States have had worse scarcity more recently than we have, and yet they're still able to approach this pandemic with a sense of collective good and sacrificing for, you know, and our strident individualism is not helping us, you know, and the love of capitalism, both of those things, I think, you know, the abundance is important, but that's not the only factor here, right? I think it's this, you know, concept that, you know, I shouldn't have to wear a mask. It's my own personal freedom. And, you know, I don't even think they think any further, right? I don't think there's even any thought that like, well, I'm putting the older generation at risk. I think it just doesn't even come into the equation. And, you know, I don't know exactly where that, I mean, well, you know, it comes from the capitalism, right? And this whole idea that our country has these freedoms that, you know, are paramount to everything else.
I think there's a large segment of the population, at least in our area too, that just have religious faith, and they think that that is the protection that they need, and their time, you know, is predetermined when they're going to die, and so they just, you know, blind faith.
You're here. Yep.
I think you said something importantly about individualism as opposed to seeing yourself as part of a collective in society, that maybe other countries have the more of a collective mindset, and we have had for a very long time rugged individualism.
Yeah, we used to have more of one, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse, to where it's practically nothing.
Wow, lots to think about here. Thank you, Sarah.
Be the worm.
Yeah, be the worm, exactly. Or at the very least, pick up the worm if you see it squiggling on the sidewalk after a rainstorm and put it back. Any final thoughts before we close up our hour?
Thank you, Sarah. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next week, we usually have a living ethics discussion on the third Sunday, but we've switched it around this month to accommodate an awesome speaker who's going to join us next week. He is 18-year-old Ryan Staples from O'Fallon, Missouri, who recently became well known after organizing a highly successful Black Lives Matter protest in St. Charles County. His talk is titled Young, Black, and American, The Deadly Combination. He will be sharing what it's like to be a Black youth in this country, where the target on your back gets wider and wider as you grow older. Those who survive are stained, while those who perish are mourned. That should be really fantastic. I'm going to create a Facebook event for his talk. So I haven't been doing that much for these Zoom events. So, but I'm going to do that, and I'm going to boost it. So if you receive an invitation, whether you're going to be here or not, it would be helpful if you click that you will. That'll help to, you know, promote him. And he's really pretty amazing young man, and he's about to start college at St. Louis University. And I think he'll be doing great things. He's been on national media, and I think it's going to be a really great talk, as was today's. I want to close with a quote. I'll just, you know, full disclosure, I Googled abundance mindset quotes, and I found some great things. So this one is by a person named Scott Epp. I don't know, Sarah, if you're familiar with him. EPP. Also, maybe you can Google him too. Having an abundance mindset is believing that you are created as more than enough, you have more than enough, and more than enough is coming to you in the future. So with that, I hope everybody has a wonderful week.
Are we doing LED later in the month?
Yeah, the following week. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it'll all be in your Monday email. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
We switched them.
We'll wave to the moon tonight. I'll be waving at you, Bill.
Okay. Lee, did
Hey,
you?
is Sarah here? No, Sarah Beggy?
No, they had a softball game.
Okay, she's our president, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I had a question. I'll just throw it out to the group. Can we pay our dues via Venmo?
Uh-uh.
And everybody says, what's Venmo, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know what it is, but no, we're not set up for that. Sorry.
All right.
Actually, let me do a little research there. I think that may be possible.
Really?
Yeah, because that's different, Jill, than like the donation site.
Okay.
And I don't think we would lose the 3%, Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just like the 3% disappearing.
Oh, it's a pain. Okay. Let me look into that a little bit. It might not be available to businesses, but if we have the routing number, it's possible, I think.
Should be free to charities, but I don't know.
Well,
That's just my belief.
Well,
I'm not saying.
No, Venmo is just moving money. It should be free, but whatever.
But not at the moment, right? At the moment, we're not.
Right.
Venmo's free to use. There is no fee for
There's
anybody.
It's just an ACH transfer, so there's no fee. Yeah.
Bill,
Yeah.
he wanted to know if you were really on the moon.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
I said, yeah, we'll look up at the moon tonight. We'll wave to Bill.
What was
Here.
interesting was when you stood up and walked away from your chair and you actually walked straight through the rock formations in the background.
I thought that was a little better than. I had a great sci-fi one, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that one was pretty good.
I was
Yeah,
just
you
going
can,
to plug
you can
in.
set that up pretty easy if you want to on your. You just import your whatever picture you want into Zoom, and it'll put that background for you.
You have to import the picture. Right then.
Lee, did you have something to announce?
Yeah, I was just going to put a plug in for the book club this month. Bill all chose the book. It's good. You want to, and then we meet on July 20th.
Last Wednesday of the month.
Thank you.
Can you tell me the name of the book again, please? I haven't been getting the notices or anything.
It's the
Yeah,
all
ditto.
girl. What is it again? I can't.
All girl filling station? Is that what it is?
The all girls filling station reunion.
By Fanny Flagg.
It's a great book. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
I still can't hear the name of the book. Something filling station?
All girls filling station.
Old Burls?
Girls, as opposed to boys.
ALL. The all girl filling station.
Reunion.
By Fanny Flagg. Certainly wasn't what I expected. It was
There
a
you go.
very good book. Touching, very touching.
Last
Especially if you have any ancestors, as Sarah was talking about her ancestors, especially if you have ancestors who were in World War II and who are women. I mean, it is very, very good.
Yeah, it's been pretty. This is the cover, the All Girls Filling Station's last reunion.
Last reunion.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your day.
All right. Have a
Thanks
good
again,
day.
Sarah.
Thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Stay safe.
Thank you, Sarah.
See y'all.